Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Now, the other day on my channel I was playing against a deck and I had no idea what they were doing. They chucked down a shield sphere and I assumed they were going to be some sort of like draw your whole deck with zeros, sort of Cheerios type deck, and then they Balustrade Spy and killed me. So I saw that and thought, well, let's have a look for it. So I hunted around online and found a few deck lists, and that's what we're playing today. Oops, all Spaniards, or Spanish Oops, or whatever you want to call it. So we have the same combo as the regular Oops All Spells deck, which is cast Undercity Informer or Balustrade Spy, and because we don't have any mana, any lands in the deck, they will mill our entire library, which will put Thassa's Oracle, Narcomoebas, and this Dread Return into the graveyard. So we'll get our Narcomoebas back, we'll cast our Dread Return, bring back our Thassa's Oracle, win the game, we've got no cards in our library. We have a couple of Cabal Therapies which can be used to target ourselves if one of our combo pieces is in our hand and needs to be in our graveyard. And that's the combo. Where this deck differs is it's using this card, Culling the Weak. So this is a 1 mana instant that gives you 4 mana. Now 4 mana is the exact amount of mana that you need to cast and activate Undercity Informer or just cast Balustrade Spy. So in order to cast it, we're going to be having to play some 0-drop creatures. So we've got 4 Ornithopter and 4 Shield Sphere. But we also have these 4 Grief. And because Culling the Weak is an instant, we can sacrifice this with the sacrifice trigger of Grief on the stack. So we've effectively got 12 things to pitch to our Culling the Weak to give us the 4 mana we need to go. Which means, because we need less cards to generate that mana, it means we can have more hands that have Disruption in. Now that Disruption being Grief, and Pact of Negation, and sometimes Cabal Therapy. Aside from that, we've got the mana you'd expect. So we've got Dark Rituals, Cabal Rituals, Chrome Moxes, Lotus Petals, Mox Opals, and of course we have the Agadeem's Awakening, which is a permanent source of black mana. And that is the deck, really. So it's relatively streamlined. It doesn't have all the cool techie things that Oops has, like the copy of Reanimate and the copy of Memory's Journey, which give you some extra lines to win with. But what it does have is a sideboard that can transform. So we've got 4 Charbelcher. So sometimes, because we're a black deck, our opponent might just happen to have a Leyline of the Void, which we cannot answer. So for any matchups where they're going to be having a Leyline, we're going to bring in 4 Goblin Charbelcher and 4 Lion's Eye Diamond. These will allow us to pivot into a different kill. And again, this needs 4 mana to get into play, and the Lion's Eye Diamond can also produce the 3 mana necessary for that. The Lion's Eye Diamond also makes the Metalcraft and Mox Opal a bit better. So that's hopefully going to be a plan we pivot to, and we don't have to board out our entire combo. We'll probably be boarding down on some Spies and like a Chrome Mox and a Ritual and stuff to squeeze in our Charbelchers and things, and that will allow us to sometimes get the thing, because they're not always going to have the Leyline. So we will still have our regular combo killer in there in the form of Undercity Informer, but we're going to be aiming for the Charbelcher. So we're just going to have more lines to victory depending on what our opponent has in play. As for the rest of the sideboard, we've got this 1 Chancellor Annex, which is a bit of a weird inclusion. I kind of get why it's in there, because it's, you know, a turn 0 piece of interaction which we may require. But I'm not really sure this is what the slot should be. We've got a couple of Slaughter Pacts, because this is just a free kill spell, and you're not going to cast this until the turn that you're going off anyway. So the lose the game trigger is never going to even be put on the stack. Also, this deck can't play the Memory's Journey, so the turn you go off is the turn you go off. You can't reset and do a few cards left in your library for the next one. You've also got 4 Leyline of Sanctity, because some decks are playing things like Endurance or things that target us to get rid of our graveyard, like Soul Guide Lantern out of any decks with the Saga in, for example. So that's pretty much it. The deck is relatively straightforward, hopefully, and we're just going to keep some good hands and rock some people. That's the plan. So before we jump into a league, which I'm hoping is going to be a short one because I'm absolutely knackered, let's do a little plug, shall we? Like, comment, subscribe. These things cost you nothing but really help me out, especially subscribers, because I'm trying to hit 1,000 so I can get monetized. So if you know anyone else who's interested in legacy content, why not send them my way? Alright, let's jump into a legacy league with Oops All Spaniards. Also, before we do that, let me just say, if you're unsure why I'm calling it Oops All Spaniards, so Oops All Spells is obviously a deck from, you know, I've played it on the channel before and it's well known. Spanish Inquisition is a deck that was around a long time ago that used Culling the Weak as its engine to generate mana. So you played 0-drops and Culling the Weak. So that's where the Spaniards bits come from, in case you want a little bit of deck history. Alright, let's jump into a league. We are on the play for round 1, which is where we want to be. So what do we have here? We have 3 mana, which isn't enough to go off. I think we're supposed to mulligan this one. So we play these artifacts out. This taps for black. So we have 3 black, and this takes us up to 4 black. We cast Balustrade Spy. We have no protection, but we have a turn 1 kill on the play. So we can keep this, and we can bin off one of our Ornithopters, I think. We don't need 2 of those. We've got 3 artifacts here. This all seems fine. We can't play around a Solitude if they have it. So we just have to go. Yeah, so they can Solitude our Shield Sphere in response to us casting Ornithopter, so we never get the mana off of our Mox Opal. Dark Ritual. Cabal Ritual. Balustrade Spy. Ourselves. Put our Narcomoebas into play. So we actually get the opportunity to look at our opponent's hand if they don't concede now. So we will Cabal Therapy, targeting one of our guys. And we'll name Force of Will, as is tradition. Now, they should have used it if they had one. Okay, so we're against elves, so our opponent shouldn't let us have seen that. Target this. Sacrifice 1, 2, 3. Put this on the stack. So what our opponent could have done potentially there is use the Once Upon a Time, but elves doesn't run endurance in the main deck usually. So it was a bit tight. It was a bit loose there in theory because they could have cast Once Upon a Time into endurance there. So maybe we should have hit them with the second Cabal Therapy, naming the Once Upon a Time. But it seems fine. All right. So our opponent let us see what they were playing. Elves decks, I think, are probably running ley lines these days because everyone seems to be. So what we're looking down, probably shaving a couple of Spy, a Chrome Mox, Cabal Rit, because they're the weakest ones. So that's 60, and we probably want these Lion's Eye Diamonds in as well. So probably getting rid of a couple of Ornithopter, a couple of Shield Spheres. And then that gets us our Lion's Eye Diamonds. Our opponent probably has... This is probably not a matchup where we actually need Pact of Negation. We're probably better off having these Leyline of Sanctity in. And the Slaughter Pact I don't hate if we're trying to play around Collector Roof. Is that worth trying to play around for this game? Because they're probably going to have it, but they are unlikely to be able to cast it until turn 2, which maybe will be enough for us. Like, we can still win with the regular kill if they don't have Leyline. They're probably not going to keep both. I think we'll just submit like this and then see how we go. Like, they're definitely going to have endurance. So what does this do? We have 1 mana, 2 mana, like any creature, which we have less of in our deck, and then we can pop off with this. We're on the draw. Any mana can give us a turn 1 Undercity Informer. I think we're supposed to keep this. Like, we beat Leyline with this hand. If we can get a little bit more, if we can draw a creature or a bit more mana. Okay, Leyline of the Void, sure. So we've got the way of beating this. Now, our opponent's hand might be a little bit weaker because they mulligan to find the Leyline of the Void, but we'll see. Now, they're probably going to have a 1-drop because they're elves. Once Upon a Time. Okay, so let's pop this out so we can see what they've found. An Elvish Visionary, sure. So they're cracking their Windswept Teeth, and they're probably going to just get basic Forest here. Allosaurus Shepherd, sure. So if we can draw a 0-drop creature or a Grief, then we are going to win the game this turn. Okay, that's not one of those things that I wanted. We will play this out. We'll pay 3 life. Do we... I'm just thinking if we Cabal Therapy this turn or not. The Undercity Informer is probably going underneath our Chrome Mox. Although, if we... Yeah, so we can Cabal Therapy our opponent here. And we can name the Elvish Visionary because we know they have it. If they have a Collector Roof, we lose to it. I think they would just keep this hand on the strength of Leyline. We just name the Visionary. Sure. So we get rid of the Visionary, we leave them with Cradle and Heritage Druid. That's not so bad. Do we want to play out any of our artifacts here? Our opponent could be a Force of Vigor deck. I think we just hold. And if we draw a Mox Opal, we can play the Narcomoeba and sacrifice it to Culling the Weak to make our Charbelcher win. So we've got some options here. A Lotus Petal also lets us cast a Narcomoeba. They drew a Verdant Catacombs for turn. This is going to become a Dried Arbor. It's going to come in for 1. Take the 1. Let's see what we draw. A Culling the Weak. So that's not one of the ones we really need here. If we draw a second Narcomoeba, we can put one Narcomoeba under Chrome Mox as well. So we're not... We got a lot of live draws. We've got 3 Narcomoebas, 4 Moxes, so that's 7, plus another 4 Petals, that's 11, plus another 8 creatures, so that's 19. Also, the another Agadeems can do it as well. It takes us another turn, but it can do it still. So we've got options. Is this just natural order? Let's see. Okay, we're not dead this turn at least. So we've got one more draw step. A Cabal Therapy. Our opponent nearly cast a natural order last turn is what it looked like to me. I think we fire this off on our opponent how. It was just a Dryad Arbor. Sure, okay. They got us by tapping their mana and untapping their mana there. Okay, just need to draw one of our little guys. We also haven't revealed the fact that we're running Charbelcher. So our opponent is almost certainly going to mull to Leyline in game 3. And we can hopefully just ignore that. There's a Dryad Arbor we knew about. Yeah, so these two are going to come in for 10 this turn. So we've got one more draw step. That's all we need though. There's lots of draws that can win us the game. Let's see if we can find one. A Chrome Mox. So we can Chrome Mox, put in Culling the Weak. Chrome Mox, putting in Undercity Informer. Then we have the Lion's Eye Diamond, which doesn't give us enough. There's no way that we can get this Narcomoeba into play. This guy isn't going to be enough to chump block on his own. I think we are not going to be able to do this one. Let me just make sure I haven't made any miscalculations. So these are our ways of putting mana into play right now. So the maximum amount of mana we can have is 3 because we can't cast a Narcomoeba because we don't have blue mana to put into a Chrome Mox. If this was Mox Opal, that would do it. Because we could play the Narcomoeba and then Culling the Weak it to play this. Nope, I think we're just done. So it's going to go to the last game. Begin sideboarding. So we know they have the Leyline of the Void. Do we want these Leyline of Sanctities? Do we want some more 0-drop guys so we can actually use our Culling the Weak? We've got 8 creatures to put Culling the Weak into. We have to assume our opponent is going to look for a Leyline on the play. On the draw, sorry. Maybe we're looking at just cutting an Undercity Informer for a Shield Sphere here. No, we'll go for this. Okay, what does this hand do for us? We can play a Chrome Mox out and then not really anything else. So this is a mulligan. We have the Charbelcher, which is one of the ones we wanted. So we've got Agadeem's Awakening and a Lotus Petal here. So we've got 2 mana. Culling the Weak gets us pretty close. How many turns do we think we can survive with this hand? If we bin off this, we can grief them. And then we're just looking for 1 mana. Is that going to be better than mulliganing? I think this is good enough considering what we have in our deck to draw. So if we draw Culling the Weak, we can grief and get 4 mana. And then play out the Charbelcher, and then we just need 1 more mana source to turn after. So we'd need 2 draws in a row, 2 relatively specific draws. So I think we should probably mulligan that one. What about this hand? Doesn't have any way of winning the game. I think we have to mulligan this one as well. Okay. So what do we have here? So we can make a turn 1 Balustrade Spy. So our opponent's got a Leyline. So I think we throw back this... We throw back the Shield Sphere, and then we kind of have to choose if we're getting the Spy or the Charbelcher into play. Our opponent has already shown us the Leyline, so I think that means we're supposed to assume that they have the Leyline here. The other option is to bottom one of the mana, but I don't think that's right. I think we're just going to get rid of the Spy here and say done, and they're going to put a Leyline into play. Yep, there we go. Okay, so we made the right call there. So if we play this, if we play the Charbelcher now, we need to find 2 mana next turn. So we could find a Dark Ritual to win, or a Lion's Eye Diamond. That used up our Lotus Petal. I think that's fine. So we're looking to draw one of our 3 Dark Rituals or one of our 4 Lion's Eye Diamonds. Failing that, just other mana works as well. A Mox Opal. Is this better in hand or in play? I think we just keep it in hand for now. So if we find Lotus Petal, so Lotus Petal we got 4 of, Dark Ritual we've got 3 of, Lines Are Down we've got 4 of, so that's 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11 cards that win us the game next turn. And obviously our opponent isn't going to sit around forever. I'll buy you. This is a Collector Roof, then we're probably just dead. Green Sun's Zenith for 1. So this is going to be some sort of little elf guy. Alright, so this tells me our opponent doesn't have a lot of mana. This is the thing that lets you cheat when you have when you don't have a lot of mana. Like a lot of lands. Okay, one of the things that wins us the game, please. Culling the Weak. Because we can play any of our 8 creatures. So 20 cards in our deck, I think, win us the game immediately. Natural order. Is this Hoof? Or just Progenitus? Or have they got some other horrible thing? Is this going to be Collector Roof? Okay, so just the Behemoth. So they're saying we have to win next turn. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes, okay. So this will put us to 1. Alright, let's see if we draw it. We've got quite a lot of cards we can draw. Mox Opal is pretty much the only one that doesn't do it for the mana rocks, right? Because I don't have a phase where I can tap these for mana. Let's show them how close we came, I suppose. Alright. So yeah, we just needed one of many, many cards in our deck. And we just didn't have it. So sometimes you're going to... That's the problem with these decks. You play on the numbers, and the numbers don't always work out for you. Alright, round 2. Alright, we have a turn 1 kill with Pact of Negation here. So I think we keep this. Shatter Skull. Alright. Lines Like Diamond. Okay, our opponent is going to be doing some stormy stuff. So we're probably not going to keep this hand. Interesting they didn't go for it there. Okay, so we get to win the game this turn, I believe. So we play out Chrome Mox. And we imprint this. We cast this Dark Ritual. And we cast this Cabal Ritual. Takes up to 4. We cast this Balustrade Spy. Target ourselves. Okay, so they're scooping. But we've seen this, and I played against this person the other day, and I think they were playing the Epic Gamble. So the Epic Gamble does not interact with our graveyard in that way. But they will try and kill us with these sorts of things. With things that this can prevent. So I think we're looking at boarding out the Pacts, because they're a defense grid deck anyway, and boarding in these things. And we're probably looking at cutting something like a Mox Opal here. Is it a Mox Opal or is it a Chrome Mox? Could be a Cabal Ritual as well. I think it probably has to be the Cabal Ritual because you need the starting mana so much in this deck. Because we don't have like Spirit Guides and stuff and anything like that. So I think this is probably right. We cut the 1 Cabal Ritual for this. We've gone slightly up on Disruption here. This is technically turn 0 Disruption as well. So, sure. If our opponent wants to go down a Goblin's line, we'll beat that with just comboing off. So this has 1, 2, 3 mana, but nothing to do with it, so we need to mulligan. This one doesn't really go anywhere either, so I think we'll mulligan. 4 cards. Well, we don't have any mana, so we don't really have a choice here. Yikes. What do we want out of this? We can keep a bunch of mana, or we can go to 3 cards. I don't think we can win on 3 cards. So we have to get rid of 3 of these cards. We spin off one of these. I think the Leyline can probably buy us some time. I'd rather have a permanent mana source like this. And the Mox Opal is questionable, so it's probably these 3 go back and we keep this and hope that we can buy ourselves enough time. Is that better than getting 3 cards? We can get a 3-card kill, right? If we have... No, we need 4 cards to win the game, right? We need land, Culling the Weak, a Guide to Sack, and the Balustrade Spy. So we need 4 things. Do I think the time that the Leyline will buy me is better? I think it probably is. And we're probably going to see a new set of cards anyway. So we can play out all of our mana here. Okay. I'm expecting us to draw a new 7 here. Now, our opponent may or may not be able to kill us off that 7. The Leyline should hopefully provide a challenge to that. A Dread Return. So this is not really one we want. Let's play through life. No. We'll put our 2 petals into play as well. Helps us play around potential mindbreak traps, as well as just if we get our hand shuffled in and draw 7, we've just got loads of starting mana there. So I think they can't afford to wheel unless they can kill us. And we can draw some amount of things here to combo off. They've got 1 card in hand. Burning Wish. Are they doing an ad nauseam line here? Peer into the Abyss. Yeah, that'll do it. Alright, so our opponent is almost certainly going to be able to kill us this turn. Let's just yield through their turn and see how they go. So they're going to play out all the mana they've got in their hand, which is going to take them a minute because they just drew half their deck, which is usually quite a lot of cards. So the Burgie, this is going to give them loads and loads of mana. One of the reasons I'm letting them play it out is because I want to see what their way through Leyline of Sanctity is. I suspect it's probably like a Void Snare that they can fetch with a Burning Wish. But it's important to see what it is. An Echoing Truth, sure. And now we've got Lion's Eye Diamond, they've got a little mana. If they show us a Burning Wish, we'll also see if their kill is the Tendrils. I assume it is. They probably have Grape Shot as well in their sideboard. But we may as well see a few more cards and see if we come across any tech that they've boarded in. Yep, a defense grid just to make sure they're super protected from things like Mindbreak Trap. And then Mox Opals, generating some manas. They've got the Lion's Eye Diamond here, so they can just cast the Burning Wish. Okay, so they're casting a Gamble. I don't really think they need to. Maybe they're just doing this because it's kind of free for them to do it, just in case something does go wrong, because we have 1 unknown card. Burgie. Okay, so maybe they're going for a Grape Shot win here because they seem to play the Burgie to get up to Storm 20. Grape Shot, there we go. That'll do. Okay. Now, how effective was this Leyline of Sanctity? Not especially effective. Do we want to just go fast instead of have this Leyline of Sanctity plan? So we could board out these ley lines, board in the Cabal Rituals, maybe some Lion's Eye Diamonds. That doesn't really help us go too much faster is the problem though. This can pay for the costs of one of our things, but that's about it. If we wanted to board in some Charbelchers, we could do that. But Charbelchers without the Lion's Eye Diamonds aren't very good. We could have Pact of Negations for turn 1 in case they have a Mindbreak Trap. Is that better than boarding in the ley lines? I think it probably is. So board these 3 and have the Chancellor. That's probably going to be enough. We've got Discard already. Yeah, I'm going to submit like this and just try and turn 1 them. Okay, so what do we do with this hand? Can make the Undercity Informer and pop it on the same turn. So we will keep. Our opponent's mulligan to 6 cards. Our opponent has mulligan to 5 cards. I don't believe there's a way that we can play around. There's no way we can play around Mindbreak Trap here, but we can turn the Cabal Ritual into a permanent mana source, which is probably going to be better. This is just going to be better in our hand if we draw some creatures later on down the line. So this turn, I think we play out the Undercity Informer. Okay, they've conceded because we had the turn 1 there. Sure, so we are 1-1 now. We won the die roll, basically, so why not? All right, actually, no, I think our opponent won the die roll, didn't they, actually? Yeah, they just didn't turn 1 us. So we ended up being able to break serve and take the game when we were on the draw, because they didn't know what we were doing and they just sort of played a slow hand. All right, let's go on to the next round. We're on the play for round 3, which is a nice place to be. What does our hand do? Our hand produces 3 mana, so we would require 1 more mana. Is that worth keeping this hand that has 2 blanks in? I think we can do better. This hand technically only has 1 mana because these Mox Opals will never be live, so I think we should mulligan again. What does this hand do? It doesn't have a payoff, so I think we have to mulligan this one. Not a great day in the office for us, is it? Let's have a look. So this doesn't need a lot to get better. So I think we keep this. And we're probably getting rid of a Pact, the Grief, and this Pact as well. We say done here. Now we have a choice here. We can play out this land, but I don't think I want to let our opponent know what we're doing. So we've got 2 mana. If we draw a Culling the Weak, then we have... That's why we kept this one, because if we draw a Culling the Weak, we just go. We can play around a daze. Mox Diamond. Okay, so our opponent's not really going to be interacting with what we're doing for the most part. Now, they can crop rotate for a Bajuka Bog. It's definitely a thing that our opponent can do. So we need to keep that in mind for game 2 and 3. I suspect we might lose this one. This is the first game here, but we'll see. We're going to have a few turns to do stuff, and our opponent doesn't know what we're doing, so we're not able to pick our spot when they don't have the ability to crop rotate. Now, they don't have that many reasons to tap down, so it might be difficult. So if they cast someone like a Sylvan Library here, that'd be great for us. Life from the Loam. Yeah, that'll do. Now, obviously, we need to draw, like, Culling the Weak or a Dark Ritual or something, but... Cabal Therapy. That doesn't seem very useful. Is it worth letting our opponent know what we're doing? I think... I don't want to play out this Agadeem's Awakening now because our opponent might be sitting on some wastelands. And if they wasteland us off our Agadeems, we're going to be even further away from being able to combo off. So I think we just have to sit back and try and draw some mana. Like Dark Ritual does it. Culling the Weak does it. Unfortunately, that's it now, I think. Yeah. Just Life from the Loam and away. Play in the forest. Exploration, probably? Yeah. So they're going to be able to get some more stuff down now. Maze of Ith. So they don't have the ability to crop rotate this turn, so if we can draw... that's close, isn't it? Not quite close enough. So we've got 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana. So this can be imprinted on here, so we just need 1 more mana. Now, again, we're at the mercy of our opponent's crop rotation here. So if we can draw something like a Dark Ritual, we can fire off a Cabal Therapy. Okay, so they have a Boseiju, which we don't care about. If they have a crop rotation, I imagine they will hold it up this turn because you can just kill us with a 20/20 if you have one now. Because they've got the right amount of lands for that. But they tap down with the Thespian Stage instead of the Mox Diamond, which means they don't have the ability to make Marit Lage this turn unless they've got another Thespian Stage. Okay, so their plan is just to Urza Saga. Now this might well fetch a piece of Graveyard Hate. Because why wouldn't you fetch a piece of Graveyard Hate with your Urza Saga, right? If your opponent's just not playing any spells. Let's see what we draw. Culling the Weak. Okay, so this is one of the cards we wanted. This gives us the ability to play this one out, pay 3 life. And then we can Cabal Therapy our opponent first. Paying black. Crop rotation, let's see what they got. They have an endurance and a crop rotation. Okay. So the endurance is going to be a potential issue for us here. Them having 2 things is a little bit annoying. But they don't have a second green card. So they don't have the green mana to play the endurance. So we should be fine. So play this one out. We'll play out this guy. And we will cast this. Paying black. Sacrificing this guy. Cast this guy. And ourselves. They get to see our whole deck. So they may as well do that. Okay, they've conceded without seeing our deck. I think they probably should see our list. But alright, so the hatred that our opponent is bringing in for us appears to be, I would imagine, is going to be things like Soulguide Lantern if it's not already in their main deck, as well as these endurances that they're probably going to go up on to 4 on. However, I have definitely seen some of these decks playing, what you call it, Leyline of the Void. So we're probably looking at removing some of our bits and pieces to fit these in. We're looking at a Chrome Mox, a Cabal Ritual, trimming on the Ornithopters because they're the harder ones for our opponent, the easier one for our opponent to kill. If we're boarding all these in, the griefs get worse because all of our black cards are kind of essential to what we're doing. So maybe we're trimming on grief. That seems wrong though, surely. Probably trimming on a couple of spies here. So we've kind of got maximum ways of trying to combo off is what we're planning on here. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is a turn 1 Charbelcher kill, so I'll keep this. This beats Leyline of the Void. This also beats Endurance. So I think we are in a reasonably good spot here. We even have a free grief that we can pitch. Let's play this and we will pay 3 life, yes. Then we will grief our opponent. Pitching this grief. So we'll put the evoke trigger on the bottom so that we can see their hand before we decide what we're doing with our Culling the Weak. Sphere of Resistance. Okay, we don't care about any of these things. We just take this. Then we will cast Culling the Weak. Sacrificing this guy. We'll play this Goblin Charbelcher. We'll play this Lion's Eye Diamond. And our opponent will concede from the game. Sure. Okay. So lands is always traditionally very bad against turn 1-2 combo decks. Because it's like a fair, grindy deck that's trying to strip all your resources away and have the inevitability of Life from the Loam and stuff. So the weakness it has for doing that is matchups like us. So we kind of got to have our cake and smash it away there. We beat Crop Rotation Endurance in game 1, and we beat Endurance and Sphere game 2 because we went in underneath them, and we also did a thing that ignored Endurance. All right, let's go to round 3. We are round 4. Sorry, we are 2-1. All right, we are on the play for round 4. Now our hand requires a black source to go off. How many black sources do we have? 4 Agadeem's Awakening, 4 Lotus Petal, 4 Mox Opal does it here as well. That's 16 cards. I think we should just mulligan though. Like, we have a lot of turn 1 hands in this deck. So this will be a turn 1 hand if we have one of our guys. So I think we mulligan it because we need to find the guy. This hand, we get to keep 5 of these cards, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Grief Imprints to Chrome Mox. Chrome Mox in this tap for Dark Ritual and this. Yeah, we keep this. Get rid of these 2. And we say done. So play this. Pay 3 life. Play this. Imprint our Grief. Cast this off of this. Our opponent looks like they are F6'd here. Target us. Okay, so they have conceded. We don't get to see their deck. So I think we're going to board in the Charbelcher package, which means we are cutting a Ritual, a Chrome Mox, a couple of Spies, and some of our 0 drops. We'll do a combination of 0 drops because we don't yet know what we're going on. We don't know if our opponent is going to be attacking our graveyard, attacking the number of spells we cast, or whatever. So I think this is probably gives us the most play, and then we can work out what our opponent is doing afterwards. Our opponent's begun with 7 cards in hand. We have 3 mana, potentially 4 if we can find any other artifact, which we now have less than because we boarded some out, although we replaced them with some artifacts, so I guess we're equal there. I think we can keep this because we've got the defense here. If we don't know what we're up against, this gives us both avenues. Wasteland actually interacts with us, which is normally something we try and avoid with this deck. Let's see what our opponent is up to. A Mox Diamond. Are they going to be initiativing us? Or are they going to be doing lands type stuff? Rishadan Port. So our opponent looks like they are more in towards the lands thing, so that's good for us. Torpor Orb. Sure. So the Balustrade Spy route is no longer a thing we want to do. That's fine. So we have something to put under a Chrome Mox if we draw one. A Mox Opal is not the one we wanted. Now we do have to play this out, which it does expose us to Wasteland. So this Urza Saga is probably going to get graveyard hate as well. A Lion's Eye Diamond. So we should be able to win the game with Pact of Negation back up here. So we play this, pay 3 life. So then we play the Mox Opal. We play the Lotus Petal. We play the Lion's Eye Diamond. We tap this for black. We play this other one. Besage You. And then they get Pithing Needle off of this. Yeah, we've made an error here by playing out the second Mox, haven't we? And we can't Pact of Negation the Besage You. We'll not search. So our opponent, if they have a Pithing Needle, they're going to get it off of the Urza Saga here. So what do we do here? This is a real misplay here. Because if we just put the Charbelcher on a stack, we can sack that in response. Interesting. I think we pass the turn and see what they name with their Pithing Needle. We've misplayed that round and we misplayed that. We didn't need to play the Mox Opal. I was trying to play around something that would tax us, but they didn't have anything that would tax us. Let's see what our opponent gets here. We need to find some more mana now. They're just getting a Mox Diamond off of that. Okay, so they don't have any indication that we're playing Charbelcher. Okay. So we're still very much in this game now. Another Charbelcher. We don't want to play a Charbelcher when our opponent can get a Pithing Needle. So we just have to pass a turn here. If we draw a Grief, we can just put it into play by sacrificing a Balustrade Spy because it won't die due to the Torpor Orb. Now that's not going to be a good clock to do anything with. But it might be able to buy us a bit of time and waste a bit of our opponent's resources. Is all we need necessarily. Life from the Loam. Okay, so they've got the Boseiju back in hand. So they're just going to slowly strip all of our permanents away here. So this is going to be a problem for us. You're going to start putting us down as well. Yeah, I think we're going to lose this game because we made the misplay there. I should have thought more carefully about what I was trying to play around. Like Boseiju and Force of Vigor were the things I should be playing around there, not some sort of taxing effect. Right, so we have a Narcomoeba. That's not very useful. So we'll just pass a turn again. Our opponent did not Rishdam Port us, which means that they are just looking for constructs here and they think they've got the game sewn up. Which I suspect they probably do, but they still have to kill us, and we might be able to see a little bit more of the hate they brought in. Okay. And copying Agadeem. Yeah, because this as a saga is the one that's a copy. So what they're doing is just making sure they've got a permanent as a saga kicking around, which is going to do a lot of work. And they're still not fetching a Pithing Needle. So I have to imagine that we are fine on the Pithing Needle front here. They've tapped down their Rishdam Port, but we know they've got a Boseiju. An Undercity Informer. That's not going to do anything here. Getting punished for sequencing is at least a good bit of educational stuff that I've given you all, I suppose. Back comes the Boseiju, sure. Now they can just be making as a saga constructs every turn. So if they make one, well, they don't need to make one now because we're dead if they make one on the next turn. This gives them one more point of damage now, but leaves them with less lands to interact with us. I don't think that's necessary. I think you just hit me for the 5 and then kill me next turn with 2 guys. See what we draw? Another one of those. Sure. We'll concede with them not knowing that we're playing Charbelcher in our deck. Okay, we didn't see if they had ways of messing with our thing apart from the Torpor Orb, which certainly does mess with our thing a little bit, but we can go underneath that. Would I rather have Leylines, Chancellor, or Pact of Negation is the question. Pact of Negation can counter Endurance. Leyline can counter Endurance. I think we probably have the Leylines in here. The other option is if they're running Mindbreak Trap. So we could be looking at something like a Chancellor. If we want a Chancellor, what we have to lose for that? Probably a Leyline or one of our guys, maybe. I don't think we can afford to get rid of everything here. Our griefs are looking pretty bad right now, but if we're trying to go turn 1, Chancellor answers more stuff. Leylines answer multiple endurances. If we're playing around Mindbreak Trap, Pact of Negation answers a lot of stuff too. Are we playing around Mindbreak Trap? Are we playing around Endurance? Are we splitting the difference in a bad way? I think 2 of these cards play around Endurance. 2 of them play around Mindbreak Trap. And that's the best we've got. We've got the discard as well, which can kind of plug the gap. This hand is one of those ones where it looks kind of good, and then you actually start puzzling out how it operates. We can't sacrifice... We don't have any black mana because we don't have the artifact. So these cards are both dead. So we should mulligan this one. We can put the Thassa's Oracle back, so it doesn't matter we've got in hand. We need another black creature to sacrifice. We need another black card to pitch to the Grief here. Like, a lot of our deck is black cards, and we'd be able to keep this hand with a Pact of Negation backup. Is that good enough? Our opponents get the game with 7 cards. We saw the Torpor Orb as their thing. They can make a Torpor Orb as early as turn 1. So if we pass the turn and they Torpor Orb, that's going to prove very difficult for us to get out from underneath. Do I think they have the turn 1 Torpor Orb? Can we just go for a hand that wins on turn 1? I think we can just go for a hand that wins on turn 1. We have a lot of them in our deck. This is not one of them. I think we have to go again. Oh, Lord. If we keep 4 cards, what are we looking at here? Probably a Culling the Weak, an Undercity Informer, and a Lotus Petal, which means we've been off these 3, and we're looking for a 0-drop creature, or... Is this good enough? I don't think we can go to 3. I think we have to stick on 4. Because we know that they're running things like Besage, we can't play any of our things out. Yeah, we're in trouble here. This is our deck losing us the game rather than our opponent winning it, I suspect. But if we draw like Shield Sphere or something, we can Culling the Weak. If they play Torpor Orb, yep, okay. So we're looking at using our Undercity Informer to pitch to a Grief or a Chrome Mox at this point. Okay, so we have 2 mana here. So we're getting towards where we need to be. I imagine our opponent's hand doesn't have much in the way of good stuff necessarily. If they've, you know, this is the good stuff. They'll worry about winning the game later. So we're going to have time. Undercity Informer. Not a great one. If we draw a Dark Ritual, it's pretty good. Punishing Fire. Okay, so they're just going to slowly get us that way. That's fine. We just need a bit of time. Exploration, that's fine. Wasteland, Brishdam Port. These don't interact with what we're doing. A Dark Ritual. So we can Dark Ritual out an Undercity Informer if we want to. And then next turn we can Culling the Weak it. Alternatively, we can have 1, 2, 3, 4 mana here. So if we draw a Lion's Eye Diamond, we can go next turn. But if we use both of these to make this turn, it doesn't really get us anywhere. So I think we just pass here. A Grief would be really good. A Grief would be lethal, actually, because we pitch this, we Culling the Weak it, and then we have this for Dark Ritual to cast our Charbelcher. A Balustrade Spy. That doesn't do it. So we'll discard our Balustrade Spy, I suppose. That's the weak link in our hand here. If we discard the Undercity Informer and then for some reason they brought Surgical Extraction, that's less resources we have to work with. That's why it's better to discard the Spy there. Agadeem's Awakening. So this is 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. We go up to 6 by playing a guy and sacking it. So we're still 1 mana shy, which means we are going to discard and discarding an Undercity Informer this turn. Yep, Punishing Fire me good. I doubt they would surgically extract an Undercity Informer at this point because they've got that covered with Torpor Orb. If I do anything to mess with their Torpor Orb, they can just do it in response anyway. It's only if they have multiple surgical extractions that they would do that, and they're probably more on the endurance line. Paducah Bog. Sure, that's one less thing to worry about, I suppose. Not that we're really going to worry about what they're doing, because our graveyard is not a problem here. Shield Sphere. This does it, I believe. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand, so we can't beat Mindbreak Trap, but that's fine. Culling the Weak. Sacrifice this for 4 mana. Play this. Cast this. 7 mana. Cast this Goblin Charbelcher. And we have the mana to activate it, so we don't need to go through any hoops here. Mindbreak Trap beats us, but... Okay, we got the match. We should have won the second game, but I did punt it a little bit with my sequencing. But we managed to win it in the end anyway, because the lands matchup should be pretty easy for this deck. And we got a little bit of educational thing about how you should sequence your thing and keep in mind that they can mess with your lines like diamonds and things like that. So, informative, and we got another W on the board, so I can't moan about that. So we're going to the last game. I think we are 3-1 now. So we've already got our money back, I believe. We are on the play for the final round. Let's have a look at our hand. We can generate 2 mana with this hand. That is no good. We will mulligan. This hand can turn 1 our opponent, which seems like a thing I'd like to do. We lose to Force of Will with this hand, but we haven't found any Force of Will so far, so maybe this is the time we do find one. Then we keep this, and we bottom the Dread Return because we don't have to discard this out of our hand. And we can't win if we don't have this, so we can't use it to pitch to a Grief. Alright, so we can play this. Yes, I would like to play 3 life. I'll play this. I will Dark Ritual. I will cast this. Are you a Force of Will deck opponent? They are not a Force of Will deck, or at least they didn't have one. So we got a free win there. Now, as I've been doing pretty much every game, I just want this these things in because our opponent's going to go for the graveyard hate. And that's probably not going to be great against us. So we'll take this Chrome Mox out. Shave a couple of spies. And we'll shave some of our little dudes. And now we have a question of what other hate pieces do we want to bring in? Do we want ley lines? Do we want Chancellor? I think the Pact of Negation is probably better. Like in the blind, because we don't really know what our opponent's doing. I think Pact of Negation, when we're trying to go off, is just the safer option than any of these, especially since we're going to be getting at least one draw step in this game. So if we draw a Leyline of Sanctity, it's dead. Same with the Chancellor, but Pact of Negation that we draw is going to be useful. So I think we'll keep this. This is a turn 1 with Grief, I believe, because we can Agadeem's Awakening, Cabal Ritual, Dark Ritual, cast Undercity Informer, pop it, and then we can fire the Griefs off beforehand. We do lose to Leyline of the Void. Our opponent did not play Leyline of the Void. Verdant Catacombs. Is this going to be a Thoughtseize? Thoughtseize would be very good against us. Okay, our opponent might be on Reanimator here. Unmask targeting us. So we're probably losing our Undercity Informer here. They took the Agadeems. Interesting. I guess that's our starting mana. Okay. Doughty Voidwalker. Sure. So the graveyard plan, not looking very hot right now. Chrome Mox. So we have starting mana, but we don't really have anywhere to go with it. So I don't really want to put Grief into the graveyard. We could play our own Grief. I don't think that races effectively here, though. So we could Chrome Mox with Dread Return underneath it. Then we could 3, 4 mana, hardcast a Grief, have a look at our opponent's hand, and then try and race them with the Grief. Is that worth doing? So we'll be going to 17. Or are we better off saving our mana for a Charbelcher? So we'd be stuck to this, and we'd need to find another 3 mana from somewhere if we wanted to cast the other Grief, which is what we'd need to race them. Although we could possibly race them with an Undercity Informer, if we can commit that to the board as well. In order to cast and activate a Charbelcher, we're going to need another 3 mana as well, and a Charbelcher. So I think we're supposed to go in on the race here. Now our opponent might have a thing they want in their graveyard like this, which is a problem for us as well. But at the end of the day, we're not beating a Grizzlebrand. We have made it easier for them if they draw any reanimation spell here. So we know they've got a land in hand as well. Now, we don't win this race at present. But our deck has more mana in than theirs, I believe. Certainly more fast mana, so we can get this second Grief down. There's the Verdant Catacombs we knew about. Sure. A Mox Opal. Okay, that's certainly a thing. I don't want to cast it just yet, because our opponent is a Serenity deck, potentially. So if we can get this Undercity Informer down, we'll win the race. Entomb. Okay, that's fine. They've already got a big scary guy that wins them the game. So if they're entombing, I don't really mind. That's better than reanimating. They are cracking their Verdant Catacombs for the very marginal thinning you get, which is not normally something I would advocate doing, but in a deck like theirs, they have no brainstorms or anything like that, so it doesn't really matter that they're cracking a fetch there, and they know that we don't have any wastelands. Okay, they're reanimating Grizzlebrand, so they can't draw any cards from it. Let's see what we can do here. We have a Charbelcher, we can't do anything with it. This is going to hit us for 7. I think we are done here. Alright. So, Reanimator. They can have Fairy Macabre for us, which is a problem. I think that's the only problem. Now, these Pact of Negations look pretty bad now. Now that we know what's going on. I would rather have these Leylines of Sanctity, which stop our opponent from discarding our hand. Would I like a Chancellor of the Annex? It doesn't stop Fairy Macabre. It can slow them down by a turn, but we kind of just want to be going underneath that anyway. So I think we submit and hope that the die roll is good enough. And this hand does not do anything. God, that's a weird looking hand, isn't it? I don't think we can keep this one. This hand makes an Undercity Informer on turn 1. Off of 4 cards. That's probably good enough. Although the only problem is we'll need to find another mana. If we keep this hand, we need to find any land to play our Undercity Informer out. To pop our Undercity Informer. Is that something we can realistically do? If we go to 4 cards, that's going to be very difficult to win with. I think we just have to keep this and hope we get a little bit fortunate. What do we keep here? We don't keep the second Undercity Informer, I don't think. Do we keep the Ornithopter or the Cabal Therapy? The Cabal Therapy imprints to Chrome Mox, so I think we keep the Cabal Therapy. They might concede when I play this guy, but we'll see. They are very unlikely to have any removal for it outside of Archon of Cruelty. Now, if they play an Archon of Cruelty on turn 1, then we lose. That's fine. But because they have loads of discard, it's safer for us to have this in play than it is to have it in our hand, I believe. Feels like our opponent is just going to turn 1 us here with like a big scary lad. Dark Ritual. Sure, that's certainly better than what we were doing. Entomb. So this is Archon of Cruelty plus Exhume. So we're probably having a Dathi Voidwalker. Interesting. Okay. That is a thing. They're going to Thoughtseize us and take our Cabal Therapy. Sure. This Dathi Voidwalker probably not leaving play. So we have put them on a 9 turn clock, and they've got us on a 7 turn clock. So we're probably losing this game. But we did mulligan pretty hard. There's an argument that maybe we should have gone to 4. But, sure. Okay. So they got a Grizzlebrown in the graveyard. A Chrome Mox. Is this Chrome Mox better in my hand? Or should I put a Narcomoeba under it? This will not help us cast any black spells. But if it gets discarded, then we're in trouble. Interesting choice. I think we keep it in hand. Our opponent's just going to assume we got nothing in hand anyway, because it's pretty likely at this stage of the game. Also, this plays around Serenity if they have brought it in. A Lotus Petal. Does this change the clock? So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. So I'll hit them for 2. So they go to 11 this turn. Then they go to 9. Then they go to 8. Then they go to 5. Then they go to 2. And they go to 1. So 5 turns from now. Now our opponent is going to hit us down to 11. Then they're going to hit us down to 8. Then they're going to hit us down to 5. Then they're going to hit us down to 2. Then they're going to hit us down. So if we play out this Narcomoeba... Well, we can't play out Narcomoeba actually, can we? Because the Chrome Mox won't tap for mana. Oh, yikes. Okay. I was doing all that math for nothing. That 1 damage isn't going to make a difference yet. But if we play it next turn, it still does. Okay. So this is bad for us. We're going to lose probably our Lotus Petal, I would suspect. No, lost the Narcomoeba. Okay. So they saw the line that we could maybe play a thing and that would do the damage. They did the maths a lot quicker than I did. Sure. We'll play this like this. Our opponent knows we have this Lotus Petal now, so we're probably incentivized to play it. I think we're just going to have this weird little Dathi Voidwalker Undercity Informer deck showdown. Leyline of Sanctity, a classic. I think I'm happy to play this one out and put the Leyline underneath it. I don't think our opponent's got Serenity in this matchup. It would seem a weird choice. But like, it was basically free to play around earlier, but now I think, now that we have a decent thing to put under Chrome Mox, we don't want it in our hand anyway. So we're looking to draw 1 more piece of mana, then Charbelcher, then win. What a silly game. The things that combo decks do to each other. Okay. Agadeem's Awakening. So play this. We'll not play the life. Put our opponent to 5. They put us to 3 this turn. So we're going to need something here. I don't think we're going to have that something. It's just another Entomb at a turn, because that's the only instant in their deck. Oh, actually, no. Dark Ritual is an instant as well. But, sure. So they've got lots of options of guys to reanimate, but I think they're just going to beat us down with this 3-2. The other option we had is possibly drawing a Thassa's Oracle naturally. We can still mill ourselves. Grief. Good grief indeed. Or bad grief, as it turns out to be. So we can grief our opponent here. We can't block this guy because it's got shadow. It's just... the game is over. I just want to see if they had any interesting tech. Well, they boarded in. I highly doubt it. But we'll have a look. Thoughtseize, Faith is Looting, Emrakul. We'll get rid of the Start Ritual, I suppose. Our opponent could even Thoughtseize us for the lols as well. Why doesn't Grief have Shadow? Has Shadow instead of Menace. It'd be much better in this position. And we're just a little bit slow on our terrible man beatdown. We'll let them get the damage. You don't see a Doughty Voidwalker killing someone, so we'll at least get them on the board. There we go. Alright, so we lost that one. So we finished the league 3-2, which I think is alright considering how the deck went. Let's have a little chat about it. So one thing I will say is in that last matchup against the Reanimator, what I should have also done was board in the 2 Balustrade Spies I boarded out. They should come back in, I think, on the final game that we played. So I had slightly more hits to keep opening hands for turn 1 possibilities. I think that was a mistake on my part that might have cost us that round. So we might have been able to squeak a 4-1. But otherwise, I think we were more or less where we were sitting there. So our record was fine. I think I think this deck is definitely weaker than regular Oops All spells. That deck has more reliable mana. It has more ways of... when I say more reliable mana, I mean it has more ways of starting off the mana chains. It has more things that produce mana in it. And instead of having combos of Shield Sphere plus Culling the Weak type stuff, the regular Oops deck just has these Spirit Guides, which will always give you 1 mana. So having an Ornithopter and a Shield Sphere in your opening hand does literally nothing in this deck sometimes. But if they were Spirit Guides, that'd still be 2 mana, which is halfway to what you need to win. So I think that is better in that front. Also, it has the Summoner's Pact, which give you mana, and they can also find your hate piece. So I think in those respects, I think this deck is definitely weaker. But what it does have that is a very strong play is the ability to board into Goblin Charbelcher. As we saw, that was very powerful for us. It allows us to play around Graveyard Hate very easily. I think you're boarding it in every single game, pretty much, because it's just a really good transformational Duke that's going to mess with whatever Graveyard Hate your opponent has, and then you can reappraise the situation for game 3. If there is a game 3, quite often it'll be enough on its own when they're sitting on like Torpor or Leyline and just get Charbelcher in the face. So I think the sideboard for this deck is very strong what it does in terms of those 8 slots. Not so certain about the other slots there. What we lose though, compared to the other one, is we have Grief instead of Thoughtseize. Now, obviously, Thoughtseize costs you a mana in your chain, but as we've discussed, it's kind of easy to get mana in the other build, whereas Grief is going to cost you an extra card. And because this deck mulligans a lot to find its pieces, that extra card is probably going to be more impactful than the extra mana. At least in my experience of playing Oops All spells, which I think I've played 3 leagues with now. So there is a little bit of push and pull between the 2 builds. I also like the Culling the Weak is an interesting one because it can get you there quite nicely. It just gives you that perfect slot of 4 mana, but then sometimes it's not any mana at all, which is a little bit of an issue in my view. Now, what we do have that we can talk about positively about this deck is the Shield Spheres. This is going to sound weird, but the Shield Spheres can buy you turns. Now, they are not 6s. I think they're not 6s. They can buy you a turn or 2 of drawing against an aggro deck. They're relatively good walls. So there is that as well. Also, I have to say that the Mox Opals don't feel great in this deck, truth be told. They aren't the most reliable source of mana. We had a lot of hands where we had these Mox Opals, and they did nothing. Whereas in the Oops All spells, you get 4 more lands in your deck, which is just better than Mox Opal. I honestly think you could probably play some of the like the Greenland or whatever that you have in the Oops All Spells deck. You could probably run it in here over at least the 4th Mox Opal. I think just having another source of mana that is reliable is worth doing. So that's probably where I tweak this if I wanted to play this build. Like, it's kind of fun. I think the sideboard gives it enough of an edge to play. And we saw when we played against the lands players, they never got a Pithing Needle against us. They just never crossed their mind that we could have this Charbelcher. Now, the more people play this deck, the more likely it is that they will start realizing there's a Charbelcher, which makes the sideboard worse. So you just go back to normal Oops All Spells. So it's one of those where if this deck picks up a little bit, it's going to get worse, if that makes sense. I think it can still be optimized slightly, but that's what I'd say about it. Anything else to mention about this list? Not particularly. I think it's fine. The Cabal Rituals don't feel like a great way of producing a lot of, like, you're never getting Threshold on. They are just 2 mana, add 1. And in this deck it is, again, like I said, it's harder to get to that initial 2 mana because you don't have these little Spirit Guides to pay for the colorless cost of a Cabal Ritual at all. Which I definitely think is occasionally losing you games with this deck. So I think there's a handful of percentage points you're throwing away because of the mana on this build. Now, I think that's fixable to a degree, but I don't think you're ever going to get your mana as good as the classic Oops build. But I also think that the explosiveness of Culling the Weak means that in theory you can mulligan quite low and just get your 4 mana quite nicely. There are builds, terrible English. There are builds of this deck I've seen that don't run the Pact of Negation, and they run more discard, I believe. So they max out on the Cabal Therapies and do some other stuff with it. And I don't think that's right. I think Pact of Negation is just the best game 1 protection you can have. We didn't actually have to use it, but we had hands where if our opponent was interacting with us, we had it there as a safeguard. Now, I should say that we got lucky this league because we didn't face a single Force of Will deck. And we had a lot of hands where we would have lost to Force of Will. Now, there is one big Force of Will deck in the format at the moment, which is Delver, obviously, which I suspect is going to be tricky for this build because they supply quite a quick clock against you. So you're not going to have that much time to interact with them. And if they're on the play, the days, especially in this build, you don't really have any spare mana. And a lot of your starting mana is going to be, well, more of your starting mana is going to be spells here. Whereas the build with the Spirit Guides can get that starting mana and pay for days a lot more easily. So it's another strike against this list. But then there aren't that many other Force of Will decks kicking around compared to previous times in the meta due to initiatives smashing all the decks out in terms of what you can play. There has been an uptick in Subtlety, though, which is a counterspell that worked against this deck quite nicely because it bounces your guys and your mana is kind of like a one-shot thing, which is another thing to worry about. Other than that, I think this deck is fine and it's fun. It's not optimal. I think you can tweak it, but I think the power really is the sideboard Duke rather than the main deck. I think I'm playing a weaker main deck for a better game 2. Now, because you're a turn 1 combo deck, maybe that's a decent spot to be in. Alright, I think we're done here. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have, like, comment and subscribe. If you haven't, well, like, comment and subscribe as well, I guess. And let me know what you didn't like. Ideally in as tactful a way as possible. But there we go. I made a few little missteps here and there, I think, with this list. But I did say I was knackered at the start, which is often the case when I'm recording, unfortunately, just because of the time I have to record due to the noise and stuff around. But alright, we are done now. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed a bit of Oops All Spaniards. Goodbye.